Leaving a currency like this is catastrophic. Now, it's clear now, this was a maneuver by Papandreou, the IMF agent. Today, he makes a speech in the Greek parliament saying, I don't need to have a referendum as long as I can get the Greek right-wing opposition to agree with me in a national unity government. Now,
so let me stop you. What you're saying here is the banksters didn't want Greece to default until the euro deal had gone through to give the banksters $5 trillion and more power over the states. Now that they've done that, now they do want to have it default to create even more carnage.
No, I wouldn't put it that way. They're trying to stave off default by, as you say, this whole idea of the European Financial Stability Fund. It's about 500 trillion, and 500 billion, and they want to use derivatives. They want to use credit default swaps and other derivatives. In other words, the cause of the crisis, they want to use that to increase the firepower, as they say, of the EFSF, European Financial Stability Fund. This is all crazy. It's physically impossible for the Greeks to pay that debt.
No, exactly, Webster. It's physically impossible, and we've covered all this ground before.
But wait. The new thing, this is what's coming at you, right? Coming at all of us right now is this model where Papandreou says to the head of the New Democracy Party, who are the reactionaries, right? They're like the Republicans. This is a party that has been sitting on the sidelines and sniping, right? Sort of what the Republicans do in Congress. Now, Papandreou turns to this guy, Samaras, and says to him, join me in a national unity government. It's going to be the PASOK, the socialists, and the reactionaries together. Now, what would that mean here in the U.S.? It would mean a national unity government of Obama and the Republicans. And where would that occur? Where could that take shape? The 12 tyrants. This is the thing. The 12 tyrants are going on behind the scenes, right? I'm talking about the Congressional Super Committee created by this rotten, despicable compromise that both parties agreed to after the debt crisis, right, at the end of July, beginning of August, with the threat by the reactionaries to drive the country into bankruptcy. One of the results of that was to create this group of 12 members of Congress, right, 6 Republican hacks, 6 Democratic hacks, right, 6 reactionary Republicans and 6 Wall Street Democrats, and they're now working behind the scenes. The chairs are Patty Murray of Washington State, Wall Street Democrat, and Hensarling, congressman from Texas, reactionary Republican. Now, if you look at the model that's being launched for Greece of the national unity government to push genocidal austerity, to ram genocidal austerity down the throats of people, the form in which this would occur here in the United States is on November 23rd, the 12 tyrants, the super committee, come forward with their solution, and they say, well, we were supposed to come up with 1.2 trillion of genocidal budget cuts against the American people, but that's not enough. We're going to have 4 trillion, 5 trillion of genocidal budget cuts so that we can please Standard & Poor's and Moody's and Fitch. And that would then be the precursor for some kind of a rotten deal along these lines. Now,
but Webster, Webster, we need to quantify this for new listeners. The point is, you can't pay back the 1,500 plus trillion in garbage that criminal government has signed us onto that isn't our debts.
Well, that zombie banks have created. Zombie banks.
Yeah.
That's deregulation. What the government did was to deregulate it because, again, from 1936 to 1982, derivatives were strictly illegal, and they should stay illegal.
Yes, but then expanding on that, the bipartisan crooks that did this, bought and paid for by these criminal elements in Wall Street, they've now done this, and now they've got the Super Congress, and you notice they're slashing all the infrastructure, but then raising taxes to pay it to them, and the destination is the journey. They mean to impoverish us in the post-industrial eugenics religion that they publicly follow, the tropism, as you've called it, the suicide bankers, who are just destroying the system in the name of total power. So the question is, expanding on this, why do they want the war now? To make it a political diversion? I mean, what do you make of this? I have to keep going back to this Iran thing, because that's the big immediate deal that'll be the patriotic diversion while we're in a new big war, while the bankers can, rob us blind while we're busy watching this. The Israeli Prime Minister has ordered an investigation into Iran leak. Kuwait paper says Benjamin Netanyahu believes the heads of the Mossad and Shin Bet may have leaked plans for an attack. Skousen's saying that's all just part of theater to act like all of Israel isn't involved in this so they can flush Netanyahu if they, if this goes bad. But Netanyahu's gone is basically saying they're getting ready to hit. So my question is, why do they want this war now?
Well, whether they want it 100% beyond the theater, I think is still a bit of an open question. And again, it's harder for them to do it because we got rid of at least we're on the way to getting rid of the weak, lame duck Medvedev. And indeed, part of this whole scenario may be to prevent Putin from making the full comeback that they also hate and fear. But here's the idea. If you have such a war with Iran, the response of Iran is to close the Straits of Hormuz, right? Cutting off oil. That oil, if it's cut off, destroys who? It destroys Europe, Japan, and above all, China. And it drives up the price of the dollar. It creates a huge increase in the price of oil. And since the dollar is still a reserve currency, this means that you have a tremendous artificial demand for dollars. And they say, well, if we have a nice little war in the Persian Gulf, then the Iranians will do us the favor of cutting off the tanker traffic. That will mean the price of oil goes to $500 or $1,000 a barrel. And at that point, the dollar overhang is absorbed out of the liquidity that's sloshing around.
No, all roads lead to war. It's the health of the state, as they say. This is what these type of crooks always do. I mean, so do you believe it's imminent, or are you saying it's not?
To coin a phrase, turn the imperialist foreign war into a revolutionary civil conflict, let's say, to a revolutionary social movement at home, to embroider a previously existing phrase. In other words, the answer to all this, if you want to build mass resistance to this, you've got to do it with demands that have actual mass traction. And that's where you get the Wall Street sales tax of 1% means no cuts, no to the recipes coming from the 12 tyrants.
All right, stay there. Going back to Webster Tarpley, you know, Webster, I've studied what the communist Chinese do. I don't know why the left loves them so much. They execute homosexuals over there. I saw some person dressed up in a Mao outfit at an Occupy Wall Street deal saying he loves Mao because he's gay and America doesn't like him. And they go over there, they'd murder him. I'm not talking about the general Chinese people, but the government. You've got Russia, incredibly corrupt. I mean, I don't romanticize any of this. You've got the corrupt banks running us. It's just all a bunch of crooks fighting with each other while we, the people, are on the bottom of it. You've got the Iranians that have had their government overthrown over and over again. You've got all this stuff happening. I agree the Western elite is in crisis, but so are the others, Webster. And I just see this going from bad to worse. What's your comment on that?
Let's look at the tactical strategic situation. We have the bad, right? The bad would be Sarkozy, Merkel, and this crew with lots and lots of others attached to them. And then we have the worst. And the worst are Obama, Hillary, Geithner, Bernanke. We've got Cameron in London. We've got Osborne, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Those guys are the worst because they represent the most virulent, destructive form of speculative finance capital the world has ever seen, right? The derivative center, London. I was on TV yesterday with a guy who said, London is the center, the premier financial center of the world. And they mean to keep that, okay? And the world be damned. So when you see the bad fighting the worst, it's something good, first of all, because it diminishes the net amount of evil in the world. But at that point, it's better to see the bad win out over the worst. And specifically, the fight is about this Wall Street sales tax.
Stay there. 5 more minutes, Webster. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, we are into hour number 4, ladies and gentlemen. Catherine Albrecht is going to be joining us. She's an expert on the Big Brother takeover to society. I want to cover the waterfront with her joining us. And then we've got Mike Adams coming up, David Icke, George Norrie, Tex Mars, Alfred Adask. I mean, the list just goes on with this 27-hour marathon worldwide transmission. The websites are prisonplanet.tv and Infowars.com. Finishing up with Webster. Webster, yes, I understand the tax on Wall Street. But see, that's a general thing. When I go down to these Wall Street events, they tell me, get your Ron Paul signs out of here. This is freedom. And we love George Soros. And we're going to tax anybody making $100,000 or more. I understand some of the groups are saying a speculation tax.
Those guys are on the Soros payroll. Look, I would suggest people to do three things. Let's highlight one election next week, right? Election day next Tuesday. City of Philadelphia, County of Philadelphia, Sheriff Sherry Hunkala running for Sheriff of Philadelphia. What's the problem she sees? Bank of America steals people's homes. They have robo-judges, robo-cops, robo-signers, robo-sheriffs. They come and steal your home. Maybe you have no mortgage. Maybe you missed one payment. They're there to steal it, right? Private property at risk from the attacks of Bank of America. So Sherry Hunkala is running for Sheriff of Philadelphia. Her platform is no foreclosures, no evictions.
No, I love it. That's solutions. When banks break the law, grand jury should indict them and they should go to prison.
Right.
And they should have the tens of trillions they've stolen clawed back and paid back into the Treasury. I totally agree with you. That's a real solution. Arrest the bankers.
All right, but this is also don't carry out their orders to steal people's homes and throw American families out on the streets. This is a lady who has been homeless herself. She's a long-term activist. So I urge people to support Sherry Hunkala for Sheriff of Philadelphia. She needs money. She needs
but
volunteers.
I'm saying that general idea, Webster, of getting good sheriffs in. Sheriff Mack has, of course, pioneered that idea. That's a great idea.
Okay, and number two, if you're in Ohio, vote against Kasich. Kasich wants to bust all the unions. If you bust all the unions, for God's sake, then there are no mass organizations that can resist totalitarian government. What kind of a logic is it that says smash the unions and then everything will be hunky-dory? Those are the only things that come even close to being mass organizations that could call a general strike to stop a war, to stop a fascist coup, or God knows what. And the third thing, if you're a Democrat in particular or an independent, you're interested in the Obama question, right? If you want to register your opposition to Obama, that he should be dumped as a failure in a Wall Street puppet, primaryobamanow.com, primaryobamanow.com. So there, I think among those three things, just about there's something for everybody that they can do, right? Because the big thing is action. And again, if you don't like the fact that Soros's facilitators are dominating the Occupy where you are, get out there with the program. Wall Street sales tax, stop foreclosures, student loan amnesty, cancel it all, no cuts, no to the 12 tyrants, and seize the Federal Reserve. Let's start laying a glove on the Federal Reserve. Nationalize them. Make them cough up $1 trillion of 0% 100-year credit. We can rebuild the United States with successive blocks of those trillions. We need to create 30 million new productive jobs at union wages. And we're sick of austerity because the austerity goes to the bankers, right? We don't want genocide against the American people. The budget will never be balanced with those methods, right? The champion of austerity is Papandreou. The more he cuts, the bigger the deficit gets. How many people do we have to kill before that becomes obvious, right? Schwarzenegger, the same story. And remember, today is the day called by the National Nurses United and other groups. Get out there and fight for the Wall Street sales tax, whatever you want to call it. The main thing is it goes to the U.S. Treasury and it goes to the states so that the states can maintain vital services. We don't need to have cops, teachers, healthcare workers, first responders fired simply because Koch and Soros want their bailouts.
All right, Webster, thanks for spending time with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Catherine
Best
Albrecht.
Best of luck, Alex.
Thank you, Webster. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Stay with us, Infowars.com. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.